All right, 3, 2, 1. Let's see. Make sure we are going live here. All right. Very good. Very good. Okay, that one's looking good. And go over here. That one's looking good, I think. Go with the old. There we go. All right. Mute. There we go. Looks like we're about ready here to kick off, everybody. We got some Boiler Room coming your way. Very special edition here.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Ladies, gentlemen, friends, foes, lurkers, regulars, GMO people, organic people.
Boiler room inbound. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Boiler Room. How's everybody doing out there today? We are live. It is April the 30th of 2022. I'm your host. My call sign is Hesher over here in the Boiler Room, and we're broadcasting live out of Central Texas today. It's Saturday afternoon, and it's getting warm out here in Texas, a little warm today. You feel that summer coming on, staring at us. All right, everybody. Yeah, we got a special broadcast for you today. We're multi-streaming again. We are live on YouTube and Rockfin and Spreaker for this afternoon's conversation with Mr. Mark Anderson. Mark will be joining us in a moment here. He is the Truth Hound. You all know that. Those of you that listen to this show regularly or listen to his show, Stop the Presses, at Republic Broadcasting Network, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 p.m. Central Time. So Mark is going to be joining us on the line here. I just want to thank everybody once again for checking out the channels over here. We have a brand new channel at Rockfin. So big shout out to Rockfin, all the Rockfin viewers out there. Thank you. And it's great to be here on the platform. And YouTube, yeah, you're there too. You're there too. We'll see how that goes. But welcome everybody on the YouTube stream. And of course, the ever-present Spreaker stream and podcasting stream. So if you're new to us, if you're new to Boiler Room, we are one of the flagship shows at alternatecurrentradio.com, bit of a podcasting collective over there. So check us out on the web. If you're new, we got a brand new website, so go check it out, enjoy it. Lots of shows over there, lots of videos, all kind of great stuff. So check it out. But without further ado, let's welcome Mark Anderson to the program. Mark, how you doing? And welcome back to the Boiler Room.
I'm doing very well, Hesh, and it's great to be back here to do a solo show. I'm really sorry I couldn't make your roundtable discussion that I assume you held this past Thursday, like usual. And but I was pretty busy dealing with this and that. But I'm doing some personal and news travels to the west from Texas through New Mexico into Arizona, partially to look into the fires situation, among other things. And you can't get very close, and it would be counterproductive to try and get too close. It would just be a bunch of driving around and staying in motels I don't want to stay in, and really not getting anywhere on the ground much. But imagine my surprise in middle April, and that was April 14. I was going through Fort Stockton, Texas, en route to Arizona, and I picked up a copy, and we'll be looking at an article. I just got done writing about this in American Free Press, but I picked up a copy of the Fort Stockton Pioneer weekly newspaper. And I wasn't totally surprised, but I was a little bit surprised to see that there was a legal ad in that day's edition talking about that different entities, private entities, are appealing to the Texas Department of, let me get this right, the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, the TDLR, to do weather modification projects, particularly cloud seeding. And cloud seeding, of course, as some of us know, many of us know, has been around about 100 years, at least officially speaking, right? And this article that I ran features a graphic on the two most common ways that cloud seeding is done these days. But anyway, the legal ad in the Fort Stockton Pioneer newspaper is a public notice that cloud seeding projects are being put before the Texas regulators, and upon approval, they'll carry out a cloud seeding project in 6 counties, all or part of 6 counties in Texas. And those counties are Pecos, Culberson, with a B, Culberson, Loving, just like it sounds, like loving person, Jeff Davis, Reeves, and Ward. And this is very interesting. The legal ad explains, notice is hereby given that the Trans-Pecos Weather Modification Association, located at 420 Mackay, M-A-C-K-E-Y, in Barstow, Texas, 79719, has filed an application with the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation for a state permit to conduct weather modification operations to change or attempt to change the natural development of clouds for the purpose, objective, period, and by the method summarized herein below, excuse me. And it goes on to say that meteorologists will select suitable clouds for seeding to guide aircraft to release cloud condensation nuclei, either at cloud base or at cloud top, to promote the growth and development of the precipitation process within those clouds. The aircraft will be equipped with flare racks or generators to dispense cloud seeding materials approved by the state of Texas. No materials known to be or considered to be an environmental hazard will be used, they claim. It's going to be silver iodide, but this project alone covers 5.1 million acres, Hesh, and it will be a 4-year duration upon approval. So if the Texas regulators approve this, it will go on for 4 years, but the likelihood that this will be reported in any widespread or definitive way is virtually zero. And that's very interesting, because then the population, when they hear the nighttime news, the nightly news, and they hear their weather reports, they're constantly given the impression that every drop of rain, every blow of the wind, everything that happens in Mother Nature is the inexplicable, impersonal forces of nature itself. Human intervention is rarely, if ever, mentioned. And I know what I'm talking about, because I've actually followed this issue off and on for several years now, starting in earnest about 5 years ago when I attended a American Meteorological Association conference and almost got kicked out of it with Ron Avery. Who gets kicked out of a weather conference, right? Well, we almost managed to do it, because we were asking a whole lot of questions based on things that we saw there, which were quite surprising. And so this trip out west, which really, I didn't have the fires at the front of my mind when I headed west, has turned into a fairly in-depth investigation, at least the beginning of one, on the reality of these fires, what's causing them, and particularly why this off-the-shelf but rarely discussed technology, why isn't it being utilized in some way, shape, or form to dampen or douse the ground, or otherwise mitigate against fires, when they know that the dry seasons are coming, so as to minimize the likelihood that the fires will start, or so as to lessen the likelihood they'll spread if they do start, you see. But if you read the media's account of what's going on, it's more of this 5th grade reporting that goes nowhere. And you could read it next year, you could read it 5 years ago. Every year they have these fires, all the news reports say the exact same thing. It's like people are in some sort of time warp, and it's almost as if people are being conditioned to accept their fate. You're going to have fires every year, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Your house might burn down, hundreds, thousands might burn down, people will probably die, but really there's nothing we can do about it except keep getting state and federal rescue money and emergency funds to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, but nothing really ever changes. And so this is where we're at.
Arguably, it gets worse each year. I mean, I, I've been a little reticent to try to put a like a solid opinion on the fires, especially in California, because that's my home state, and I've lived in two of, I guess maybe three of or multiple of the main fire areas. You know, I grew up in the Sierra Nevada foothills and not very far away from the town of Paradise, and Paradise was completely wiped out. Uh, you know, and then there was another one in the same county a couple years later. We have one listener um, whose, I believe it was his brother. I think he lived with his brother. And they had a house in Paradise. We have actually more than one listener who are from Paradise or had a house in Paradise, and just gone, just completely wiped out. And then spent like 2 years getting into a new place in the area, and that was in one of those housing developments that burned down in the previous, or you know, in the following, one of the following fire seasons. You know, you used to think about fire season and it was like, okay, yeah, there we have the Santa Ana winds in California, like there was a fire season, and California was really good about it in the sense that um you know, the utility services were minding the wires, you know, like PG&E used to be always out. I remember when I was a kid, PG&E was always out limbing trees, making sure that trees were limbed, and that you know, it wasn't dangerous around all the wires and stuff. And same with forestry services. Forestry services back in the, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s was good about doing controlled burns and things like that. You know, making sure they had fire lines set up before the fire season. And then it was like the state just changed, and all of a sudden, you know, they stopped doing that. PG, I never saw PG&E out anymore for years doing limbing or anything like that. And all of a sudden, there's tinder all over the state, and then the fires start getting worse and worse. I've had, like I said, we've had multiple listeners with houses burned down. One of them with two houses burned down, one after the other. And um, Spore's parents almost lost their house two times now. My parents, who live in separate houses in the Sierra Nevada foothills, both of them almost lost their house. My mom's house, like the fire station, like it was in their yard. The fire station used their house as a their base of operations for that particular hill that was on fire. So it is now. It's like to the rest of us that don't live in areas like that or fire areas. It's like we are now conditioned to be like, oh, it's fire season in California again, or you know, over in that state, and even more so the people like my parents, and even worse, people who have actually lost their houses. Um, like they are just traumatized over it in a sense. You know what I mean? It's like you're bracing yourself every time the fire season comes around. And then there's, you know, back to the thing here. What is the deal with weather modification? Like so many people don't think that that's a thing. They think it's all, you know, natural, or that this has been going on the whole time, and that, you know, one could not go and check out here everybody, if you think that this is not real or that this isn't happening, even though Mark is sitting here telling you about city ordinances and agreements and corporate stuff, here's a list of books you can check out. A Case for Climate Engineering by Keith, A Field Guide to the Atmosphere, Can Science Fix Climate Change, The Weather Business. This one is so old, it doesn't even have, all it says is weather modification. It looks like it's 100 years old, Mark. I can't even read the one under it. I'm looking at a stack of books on this.
Mhm.
Here's one from William Thomas called, I can't read that one because it looks so old also. Here's another really old one by Hess, Weather and Climate Modification. We've got The Deliberate Corruption of Climate Science, Chemtrails, HARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. A new little ice age has started. There's all this information out there, and people just want to, not only do they want to close their minds and their eyes when they hear a conversation like this and not go look into that themselves, because that's all we're really saying people should do, is not just listen to the television tell them that it's a political matter. That's the stupidest one of all. Oh, don't listen to those deniers, it's a political matter. No, really, it's not. I mean, everybody that doesn't like this conversation claims to love science so much. So I just gave you a list of over a dozen science books there you can go read and think about. But anyways,
Right.
if this is a thing, Mark, if weather modification is a thing, why is it failing so badly? Are they really using it the way that, because ostensibly, if you're like, okay, maybe I do want to believe this, and then I read all their information about it, and it's all about protecting us, right? Well, is it working? Like, is it functioning? Is it happening?
Well, there's a lot of ways you can go with this. One thing is that in the current 5-6 county area, the 6 county area I mentioned that is getting approval through the Texas regulators to cover 5.1 million acres in cloud seeding, they're talking about things along the lines of preserving aquifers and the water table, because if you don't get enough rain, of course, the water table tends to go down, sometimes because of heavy irrigation during droughts. Therefore, the farmers and the cattlemen will use groundwater more. So if you don't have rain to seep through the ground to replenish the water table, that's one problem, correct? And then there's other surface water issues that are explained in some of the Texas literature and elsewhere. And again, cloud seeding itself has been known about and practiced for the better part of 100 years. I believe even Japan, if memory serves, was using it as long ago as the 1930s. But the thing is that with all the rain enhancement projects, because it's so hush-hush or hidden in plain sight, one might say, because here I find a conventional newspaper in Fort Stockton about halfway between Laredo and El Paso, and I find this public notice in there, and it's explaining all the particulars, and it's not in the news, it's in a paid legal ad, a public notice. And so, the average person doesn't really look through the classifieds and the legals with any real perusal, right? So a lot of people won't see that ad, but the ad meets the minimum requirements that these companies have to go through in order to seek their licenses to do these weather modification experiments. Now, when I questioned the media spokeswoman for the Texas Regulatory Agency, her name is Tela, T-E-L-A, Mange, M-A-N-G-E. Maybe you'd want to show the article, it's up to you. The headline is quite profound in itself. But yeah, there it is. You'll notice that the main headline, the 6-county project I'm talking about, is 5 million acres, but other projects in the state, according to the Texas Regulatory Agency that I cited, bring the total affected acreage to 31 million acres. This is all official. There's nothing clandestine. I didn't have to, have some sort of deep throat meeting in a parking garage like Watergate. This is all hidden in plain sight. This is all absolutely confirmed that Texas, over the next 4 years, is going to be affecting between 5 and 31 million acres with ongoing cloud seeding projects. And again, the likelihood of hearing about it on the news is pretty nil. But what's interesting is how successful the projects are, because they're so relatively hush-hush, is not altogether known. But when I asked this Tela Mange about it and whether cloud seeding might be considered for fire mitigation, she claimed not to really know. Like in the next to the last paragraph, the third paragraph from the bottom, it says the TDLR spokeswoman, Ms. Mange, also told American Free Press that she's not aware of any proposals past or present, to utilize cloud seeding for firefighting to any degree, nor is she aware of anything but silver iodide being used in Texas. Moreover, she's never heard of ion generation being proposed. Now, ion generation is another way that's not shown in that graphic of creating rain, and that's being done in the Middle East, including in Abu Dhabi, in the Middle East, in the desert areas, in some of the driest areas on Earth. They're using ion generation, where they emit ions or negatively charged particles from 10-meter tall towers whenever the relative humidity at the ground reaches 30% or more. And that works as well. And what you just showed on the graphic shows the conventional way of doing it from an airplane. And also you can use silver iodide from the ground using heat from burning propane. The heat from burning propane fuel lifts the silver iodide crystals to cloud level. That's from the bottom up, or from the air. See, so what you see there is from the air and from the ground. You can go either way with silver iodide. Now, notably also, the EPA's clean water guidelines consider silver iodide a hazardous substance. But the Texas regulators are basically saying that the concentrations when you cloud seed are low enough to where the EPA warnings about silver iodide being a hazardous substance don't really apply. Other alternatives are dry ice, which is basically frozen carbon dioxide, or potassium iodide. Even table salt, standard sodium chloride, is used to some degree to help make it rain. So what it boils down to, Hesh, is that they're saying that using this for fire mitigation isn't really a serious consideration. The only people I spoke to who said it's at least being considered for that is at the very bottom of the story. It's called the Central Arizona Project. But ironically enough, even though they're called the Central Arizona Project, most of their projects are outside of Arizona. But they at least address the basic idea that, yes, maybe at some point in time, a little bit here, a little bit there, cloud seeding might be looked at to make it rain for purposes of weather mitigation. Yeah, there's the last paragraph where I talked to a spokeswoman for the CAP, or Central Arizona Project. So without getting too far into all the nitty-gritty details, you have a lot of cloud seeding going on in Texas, and it's being considered and used elsewhere across the country. This is an ongoing investigation, so I'm going to find out more about Colorado, California, Washington, Oregon, etc., Nevada. But much of it, if not most of it, is not being used to mitigate against fires. It's being used for other things. So one of the big questions that comes up is, if they're cloud seeding a lot and they're not doing it for fire mitigation, might it be true that all the weather intervention that they're conducting might actually cut down on nature's rain and actually encourage more drought? I don't know the answer to that question yet. I've heard the question asked, I've heard it bounced around, but maybe they're tinkering with the weather so much, never really using it substantively for fire mitigation, and therefore all the tinkering in the long run might be causing either the ground to become ultimately drier from the substances falling out of the air, and or it might be discouraging more of Mother Nature's rain. So again, humankind and the folly of mankind, right? Is this something that's actually going to end up causing more harm than good? Whatever short-term benefits it might bring for the water table and for farmers and ranchers. And I'm not saying that they don't need help, but you see the issue here. When you read the Arizona Republic's reports on the fires, and I'm not boasting, but it just bears no resemblance to any kind of analysis that's going to go anywhere. All it is all of this is inexplicable. It's seasonal. Here we go again. The authorities are going to get more booty from the federal and state level, more disaster money. And all that money, tens of millions flowing every year, Hesh, creates what I call a fire industry. I mean, these fire departments and these state environmental departments are getting tens of millions of dollars that they would otherwise not receive. And I'm sorry, sooner or later, that's going to have a corrupting influence on any honest efforts to fight these fires and proactively do it. But again, you read the Arizona Republic, and it's absolutely pathetic. The conventional fourth estate is just such a dead letter that they're useless in dealing with this issue.
It's pretty scary thinking about that, Mark, because you look at uh, arguably the medical industry, lots of facets of modern medicine. You look at the military industrial complex, um, the pandemic industrial complex. Many would argue. Now we're also seeing like these little miniature truth industrial complexes popping up, and those are completely frightening because they're anathema to free speech. So yeah, people are starting to notice all these little. This is going to sound like an oxymoron, but all these little cottage industries are being rolled out, red carpets. You know,
Mhm.
and it's really sad. You look at diseases that we've been dealing with as societies for a long time. Some of them have a lot of cures actually that people aren't allowed to talk about anymore. You can't talk about cures, especially if you're a medical professional. If you're a medical professional, you're pretty much bound by law and procedure to not be telling people about alternative medicines and ancient
Mhm.
cures or highly technological cures, magnetic related, Tesla related, whatever's out there. I don't even know. I'm not an expert. I'm not giving health advice here. I'm just pointing out that there are all these little uh, industrial complexes that are coming out, and some of them are not good for society or could be better if they weren't run by the government and by federal agencies and attached to federal money and federal grants and federal research papers and all this stuff like it's coming from the spider's web. So to have a potential fire industrial complex, that's not good. And look at what's going on in California. Also, I got to harp on California a lot because that's where I know the most about where fires have happened, how that affects the people there. Look at the cost of housing there, the cost to insure places in these locations now. Like retired people that were living comfortably in some of these locations in California are now not able to afford their house insurance because it's changed. All of a sudden, there's a legitimate fire season for whatever reason. I'd say multiple reasons, myriad reasons, but yeah, there people are going to get priced out of the location. And then you look back at some of those overhead shots of some of the neighborhoods that burned down in the past, I don't know, 5, 6 seasons over there. Some of them are pretty suspect looking, I think. Like a lot of people think they are. I don't know what to make of them. Uh, you know,
That's an interesting angle too. Just as a quick note, here's the Arizona Republic. About a week and a half ago, 20,000 acres destroyed, and yeah, what serves the thing that you're talking about, or illustrates that to some extent, could be this picture here. This is somebody's home that they took a picture of after the fire went through, and you'll notice the degree of destruction, and behind it there's a line of trees that have not been burned at all. And a lot of times you'll see homes. Now, this photo is not definitive. It's not an overhead. It's not as definitive or clarifying as it should be. But just to briefly touch on that, a lot of times going back to Santa Rosa, California, and Paradise several years ago, you'd see overhead shots and you would see homes and neighborhoods almost surgically burned, and you'd see no line of trees leading from the forest to the neighborhood. So it's like, how did the fire not only get from the forest to this subdivision, but jump a highway in doing so? Okay, and I'm not making this up, and I'm not making more of it than it is, but it's amazing how uncurious the modern members of this so-called laughable fourth estate are. They have no sleuth in them. They have no natural curiosity. The reporter of yesteryear was someone that had a hunch. Now and then you got to have a hunch. You got to have a gut feeling and act on your gut. That's the way it works. you don't just sit there and wait for government press releases to come in and rewrite government press releases. Okay, it doesn't work that way. And yes, there is a shining example of what I mean. You'll notice how clean the streets are. Could you have a more accommodating fire than that in terms of the streets and even the cul-de-sacs being clear of any ash, let alone debris, and nearby homes being not only untouched but pristine, when they should have been subjected to incredible amounts of heat, because you'd have to have incredible amounts of heat for the other homes that were burned to be so completely burned, and have virtually no trace of any appliances, no trace of anything. And yet trees are largely unconsumed near those homes that were completely destroyed, and very surgically so. And so photos like you're showing there, Hesh, are not uncommon. And I know what the idiots at the Arizona Republic or the other morons in the other newsrooms across the country would say, oh, you guys, you conspiracy theorists. But at least we ask the questions. How do you not ask questions when these things happen? Who does that, right?
Right. I mean, I'm not even making a theory here. You know what I mean? It's like I'm just looking at what everyone else is looking at on the internet, and that's the beauty in free speech. So it's just that's the picture, okay? Maybe that one was altered. Maybe that's conspiracy candy. I don't know. I'm open to all these ideas. I'm not theorizing. I'm just saying that looks really weird. And some of those cars look similar to some other situations I've seen outside really
Right.
weird events, anomalous events. And another thing, Mark,
Right.
you talked about ionizing the atmosphere. When there's another facet here that I think a lot of people don't know about, maybe, or think about much. When you ionize the atmosphere, there's other effects that one can make, right? Like they can, once the atmosphere is ionized and you have magnetic particles bouncing around in it. We've seen all kinds of that there again. You can read books on it. There's treaties about it. There's other stuff that they can do with an ionized atmosphere. And they don't. That's our atmosphere. That's where our oxygen is. That's regardless of what anybody thinks about the climate change debate. It's like we're all breathing that. We're all, living and
Right.
dying in that. That's, what is affecting our water, our food supply, our everything. And I never got a letter or an email or any notification that a change or, that policy was happening, like this stuff here, nothing.
Mm.
I didn't have a say in that. Did you? I mean, you're here in Texas. Did they ask you if you're cool with silver iodide crystals being released in the clouds from a chemical flare tube out of an airplane?
No, see, that's the thing. You hit the nail on the head. On the one hand, you have this disclosure and the public notice ad that I saw in the Fort Stockton paper, and you have a regulatory agency in Texas that regulates everything from the handicap things that you put on your mirror, for people that park in handicap parking places. They regulate a broad range of things, and up to and including weather modification. And there's the Trans-Pecos Weather Modification Association, and there's two others in Texas, the West Texas Weather Modification Association and the South Texas WMA. So there's three major WMAs there, and they have addresses, and I'm going to be contacting a lot of these entities, the private entities that are doing the cloud seeding. Is this limited to cloud seeding? Will the cloud seeding they're doing work? When can the public get a record of when they're getting started, how often they do it, what the effects were? Are these going to be on the nightly news ever, that a given rainstorm, a given pattern of rain will have been caused by human intervention rather than Mother Nature? Or is this all going to be kind of public notice, but when it actually happens, kept on the hush hush? And that remains to be seen. But this blows a hole in the whole idea that there's no such thing as weather modification, because there's a lot of people that scoff and roll their eyes at the mere suggestion of this, and they're just dead wrong. This is absolutely rock solid that it's happening, and it's only a question of degree and the effects and what they're going to use it for. And this needs to be fleshed out, which I'm going to do, because again, what's in the Arizona Republic is nothing more than where to drive, where not to drive, how to avoid the fire, don't go here, don't go there. They're getting all the disaster money at the federal and state levels. People are meeting at a gymnasium if you got displaced by the fire. Here's the phone number if you need to go to the gymnasium or wherever people are camping out to wait out the fire. And that's the extent of newspaper reporting. They'll say something like, the cause is unknown. The cause is always unknown, invariably, by these media reports. Everything is portrayed as inexplicable and ultimately not fully explainable. Just the random, pardon my French, shit happens view of these issues. You know, everything is just the uncontrollable forces of nature. And invariably, of course, they tie it to climate change. Well, the reason we're having all these droughts is because the planet's getting warmer from human activity. So the only thing they'll double down on is to reinforce the climate change worldview, that ideology that is not settled science by any means. You know, statements to the contrary notwithstanding. So that's what you get out of the media, is just trying to validate their climate change pet theory and the rest that I described. You know, don't drive here, don't drive there. Here comes the money year after year. Nothing you can really do about it. Just go to the gym and wait it out, folks. And make sure to rebuild in the same place, and make sure to pay those higher insurance rates to the insurance industry. One wouldn't want to avoid maybe rebuilding a home in the same spot. And we used to see that with major flooding too, right? A lot of analysts would wonder, well, if you're in a major flood zone and your house is destroyed, why are you rebuilding in the same spot? And much the same could be asked of this. If you had a house burned down in a major fire area, or what became a major fire area, would you rebuild in that same region? Should you? See, so there's just myriad questions and angles on this that go underexplored or unexplored, while the media does its yearly pablum in the way I described.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we've reached a fundamental impasse here, where once again we're illustrating that cloud seeding and geoengineering is a real thing. We have the information here from legal Texas documents. They're talking about how they do this from the air and from the ground. They're talking about silver iodide crystals. So this is obviously a thing. Okay, so let's just drop that whole you're crazy for talking about chemtrails thing, and that's a bit of a problem, right? Like, once you have to do that, because I'm sorry, viewers, if that stings, but you can't say it's not happening. We just showed you, and you can prove it to yourself. You can look it up for yourself. You can also read those books. You can also go look at the United Nations weather warfare, weather modification treaties from 1974. Why would the United Nations make those in 1974 if this has not been a thing for a long time? So we just did away, Mark. Here we go, taking the narrative from people that want to give us false narratives or dubious narratives or self-serving narratives. We just took that away, right? So now we have to ask ourselves, okay, well, if we are going to have an argument about climate change, then we have to, one half has to argue either side and prove that what is being done in the sky is not affecting so-called climate change more or less than they could prove that humans are causing climate change, you know, any measurable change. And there's a lot of science that could be opened up in that discussion, starting with some of those books that I mentioned there. And then these are just, it begs all these questions. Okay, is it working? Like I said earlier, is this even working? Because if climate change is really something we should be alarmed about, then these things are not working, obviously. And at the very best case, at the worst case, they might be counterproductive to a natural or better climate. And then it also begs the question, then, Mark, when when bad things happen, when a neighborhood burns down, or when a freeze hits Texas for a week and they turn off all the power to hundreds of thousands of people for days on end,
Mm-hmm.
what's the connection? Is there like one is like, oh, okay, people just died, some retired person just froze to death in their house or slipped on ice and wasn't found until everyone else was able to get out of their house, or burned to death in their house. Why are we not looking at the responsibility of people that are doing this to the climate if there is a connection there? You know what I mean? This is why we should be able to all know about this, vote on it or something, and rather than have it be stuff that's snuck under the door in the legal department and in the back ads of the treeware newspaper that nobody reads anymore. That's so, yeah, there's all those things. And then I'll also say, Mark, leave the meteorologists alone. You guys are making the meteorologists on television, your own meteorologists, look terrible. And these people programming the cell phone apps to let you know, like, what is this weather just in time sort of paradigm that we're getting now? Like, it used to be they would give you a forecast and it had a certain percentage of reliability. Now it's like, oh, it's subject to change at any moment and we don't have to explain crap to you plebs. And it just makes the, your weatherman or weatherwoman on television look really stupid. Like, there should be a weather person uprising to fix this for their own reputation's sake.
Well, I'm going to say something I think you'll find interesting. I think the alternative media needs to get into meteorology. We do news and we don't do sports, but why don't we do news and weather, right?
There you go.
And it might be a little bit more like the Farmer's Almanac of yore, where it was more of a general predictive trend. And the Farmer's Almanac was often surprisingly accurate. But yeah, the situation is really pretty intolerable. I think the constructive way of looking at it is that you hit the nail on the head in a very important way. Let me go there first. We're told that climate change by humankind is generally not a good thing, that we need to stop impacting the climate deliberately, whether it's through our backyard grills or through cow farts or whatever. But yet these companies are getting licenses, 4-year licenses in the case of up to 31 million acres in Texas. They're getting licenses to do just that, to use human activity to deliberately affect the weather. Now, when I go and put some burgers on the grill, I'm not going, well, maybe I do burn them, right? Maybe I'm not the grill master, but I'm going to put some burgers on the grill. And by the way, I'm going to also make sure that I alter the weather in doing so. It's not like I'm going out there to deliberately alter the weather when I use my charcoal grill. But these people who are engaging in these cloud seeding and aerosol projects are knowingly and willfully applying for licenses to, in a very ongoing and relatively intense fashion, to affect weather patterns. And so I thought man-made climate change was a bad thing, but that's exactly what this is. It's man-made changing of the climate, knowingly and willfully. I thought that was a bad thing, or at least a risky thing. But digressing a little, I actually think some intervention is necessary. It's not a whole lot different than when there's too much overfishing in the oceans, that the trawlers are encouraged to hold off a little bit. Those huge trawlers that pull in huge amounts of fish. Some regulatory agencies will say, "Now let's go easy guys. Chesapeake Bay is getting low. Wherever they're fishing very heavily, there are certain regulatory guidelines, right? don't burn if there's an extended dry season. Don't burn in your backyard. Don't burn rubbish or something. And so human intervention in terms of overfishing, in terms of burn bans during dry seasons, there's lots of regulations that make sense. And cloud seeding in some constructive way would seem to me, and logically speaking, would have some applications here that would be justified in exploring to see whether it could be used for wildfire mitigation. Although the causes of these fires need to be much more ascertained. We need to know much more about what's causing them. The mass media cartel doesn't seem to ever have anything firm on that. And so much more to know much more about the causes, to know much more about cloud seeding with respect to fire mitigation, not just the water table and helping farmers and ranchers, although a lot of that is not mutually exclusive, right? If you mitigate against fires, that will in turn help farmers, that will in turn help homeowners, that will in turn help ranchers who lose livestock due to these fires. So we need a holistic and comprehensive look at this issue, not just this annual vignette, this annual melodrama that we get from the press, where everything again is just inexplicable, unexplainable, and ultimately just the same thing year after year. And so, you know, these are the issues that we're looking at, and it really calls on the alternative media like ourselves, because the so-called fourth estate is a dead letter, to again kind of do our own weather reporting, if you will, certainly in a different way than what you see on the nightly news, and to say, okay, if you're doing cloud seeding to this extent in Texas, what about the other 49 states? I already learned from doing the Texas report that we just showed on the screen. I've already learned that there's Colorado, Arizona, and Nevada, but ironically, not much Arizona right when they need it the most. But we need a whole nationwide, all 50 states and Canada kind of report on this, maybe even a little bit of Mexico, whatever the case. How much cloud seeding, and if it's not just cloud seeding, what else is it? Okay, let's talk about aerosols. Let's talk about the tic-tac-toe in the sky. What is that? We're not making grandiose claims about this. We just, in the alternative media, we want to know the answers to these questions, unlike the mass media cartel. Is that such a sin? I ask you.
Yeah, what's the problem with that? I mean, that was 5 counties that were listed in the article, right?
Yes, 6. Actually 6.
How many counties are there in Texas? I mean, there's a lot, right?
254.
Okay, so 5 counties. I almost every day see airplanes way up high in the sky, actually at different multiple altitudes, doing an activity that looks exactly like what is being described in that article, to the best of my knowledge, as a bipedal human meat sack walking around on planet Earth, just looking up with my eyeballs. I see these. They're going straight up and down. Sometimes they're going in strange parallel patterns. Sometimes they make grids in the sky, and they leave consistent contrails. All right, we can agree to use that term, I think. I'm not saying anything inflammatory there. These persistent contrails are up there, and they spread out in a very strange manner. They've even made new classifications of clouds that are supposed to describe some of these things. Like, they have a new classification of cloud that describes exactly what I'm seeing, but they describe it as a cloud. Yet I've watched a airplane leave a contrail of some sort that spreads out like a gray, weird, long cloud, and all of a sudden there's a definition. Whoever that is, that Noah, I don't know who defines types of clouds, but look it up yourself, folks. You can figure it out, and you'll find it. So it's like, that's kind of a deceptive thing. And yeah, why are we not allowed to ask this? And why am I seeing it in my county? Why am I seeing it in Dallas? Why am I seeing it in Austin? I'm seeing it in trying Travis County, Bell County, all these different places. Those weren't listed in the list. I'm pretty sure I'm not seeing the the ones that are happening out in Fort Stockton. I've been through Fort Stockton. Whew, boy, that's a sparse little place. Shout out to our Fort Stockton listeners. If we have any, I think we may have the only one on the line here. Luckily, he doesn't reside there. I think Spore and I spent a night there, some hotel / bowling alley thing. But yeah. So why is it happening everywhere? And why is it considered sketchy for us to ask? We're simply trying to ask. I think that's a normal thing to want to know, especially when we're seeing these things happen. We're seeing fire hazards growing. We're seeing this rhetoric growing that's blaming everybody, blaming the normal people, normal hamburger and Beyond Burger eating people for causing climate change, when we for example know that our own Department of Defense is the biggest polluter maybe in the whole world, maybe not compared to China, which sends up, I believe the estimate is 90% of the ocean pollution comes from 3 rivers in China. So it's like, wow, you really want to talk about pollution? Even those of us out there listening that are skeptical about climate change, most of us are still essentially environmentalists when it comes right down to it. We don't want our planet trashed, and we know that corporate entities and military entities and governments are the biggest planet smashing, pollution making, no F given entities. They're the ones that are largely responsible for it, if we have to look at it as an existential threat. And even then, with the terrible things that they are doing, is what they're doing to the climate a more existential threat than what they're doing financially, geopolitically, and on and on. You know what I mean? Like, where's all our nuanced conversation about that kind of stuff? It's let's just be hysterical, and say, give more money to these new industrial complexes, these old industrial complexes, these old ideas, and these new ideas that don't make sense and are all conflicting.
Yeah, hysteria. That would in part describe the mass media cartel's reporting. It's sort of a low-level quasi-hysteria. Burn, baby, burn. Get that disaster money. Next year, repeat the same thing. We don't really know what caused it. Oh, people, they throw a cigarette out the window. They don't extinguish their forest fire. And this is not to say those things don't happen, but lightning strikes are another issue. And granted, you can't absolutely predict those in their severity or their location, but there are other things more nefarious that are suspected in terms of causing these fires. But I'll stop there and hold off until I and others do more research on this. But it's interesting to remember, tying into what you just said, Hash, the military corporate angle. One of the only conferences, I've only been kicked out of 2 places where they've attempted to kick me out. In Austria in 2015, at the big hotel where Bilderberg had just left, I walked in there and I was looking around a little bit, and I happened to put my hand down inside a couch crack in like a soft chair I was sitting on. And I was just kind of joking with somebody, well, maybe they left a USB drive here before they left, right? I was talking about the Bilderberg group. And somehow, some way, the management saw me, and the manager of the entire luxury hotel had his face 3 inches from mine and was screaming in my face and threw me out and threatened me with arrest. And the only other time I've been threatened with being thrown out, and it was not successful, was the American Meteorological Association conference in Austin in 2017. Now, I've said this before, who gets thrown out of a weather conference, right? Well, me and Ron Avery both had lanyards, are identifying press passes around our necks. I got our access to the event through American Free Press, and we were approved as media, just like any other media. And we didn't want to be treated any differently. Just treat us the same. No big deal, right? And we're in the exhibit room, which had like a large conference often does, lots of exhibits, dozens, if not hundreds of exhibits, and military contractor after military contractor after military contractor uh, talking about how they can harness the weather, talking about how they can affect the weather, talking about the weather's strategic place in military strategy. One thing after another, Raytheon, uh, even the Ball Jar Company, get this, the jar company, the famous ball jars that our grandmas and parents used to can vegetables and fruits. The Ball Jar Company is now a multi-tech company involved in military contracting. I kid you not. And Ron Avery and Ron is now a radio host in his own right on Republic Broadcasting, where I am, and he does video simulcasts for my show. But he had a live stream video camera, and the manager of the exhibit floor came up to us and tried to intimidate us and said that we really shouldn't have the camera on in there, and what are we so curious about? And we were actually having just casual conversations with the people that were manning a number of the exhibit booths, asking them sometimes harder questions, sometimes softball questions, sometimes just, hey, where can I get a hot dog to eat or something, just making small talk. And nevertheless, they didn't like that, and he repeatedly tried to throw us out, and we just told him in no uncertain terms, we have approved press passes and we're not going anywhere, and he can stand there all day and try and be Mr. Tough Guy, but we're going to stay. So we stayed, and there was nothing he could ultimately do about it. So he walked away with his tail between his legs, but we were marveling, Hesh, at the dozens of military contractors there to talk about how not just understanding, but affecting and modifying the weather is something they can do, and their particular company can modify it in this particular fashion for this particular objective. And then we went to breakout sessions involving meteorologists and academics and whatnot. And invariably, Hesh, the breakout sessions, several that I attended, one or two in particular, were about cloud seeding. And cloud seeding was spoken about. And I mentioned this in this story that we showed. It mentions here, it says, this was confirmed. Okay, I'll read it a little bit more. Far from mentioning human activity as a causal agent in creating weather patterns, typical TV meteorologists invariably present the weather on television as being purely the product of nature's impersonal forces. This was confirmed when this writer, that's me, attended a 2017 AMA conference in Austin where meteorologists spoke of routine weather alteration projects, routine, but indicated that such projects very rarely make the news. So that's exactly what Ron and I saw, was one overhead presentation after another about cloud seeding in Colorado, about cloud seeding in Nevada, and all this stuff going on, making it rain successfully oftentimes, but also them saying and kind of chuckling that, you know, the news doesn't really tell you that, the weather reports. And so, you know, it begs the question as to the total scope of this thing nationwide. That's what needs to be nailed down. We need all 50 states, and again, maybe a little bit of Canada. We need to know the full scope and the licensing, like I laid out here in Texas, and full disclosure, just how much of the weather we experience day to day is man-made and how much of it is Mother Nature. That's the question we need answered, along with other residual effects, like if they make it rain a lot, does that bring greater drought later? Does it exhaust the atmosphere to some extent? Do the particles ever reach the ground from what is sprayed in the clouds or to make clouds? If the substances do reach the ground, does that make the ground more brittle and more dry ultimately and more prone to fires? Sometimes it does, I understand. Victor Thorne, the late Victor Thorne, who used to write for AFP, he did some reports on that some of the materials used in atmospheric aerosols were actually making the underlying ground and forests and land more brittle and more dry. And then you've got the fact that a lot of state and national forests are very inefficient these days and typically have been inefficient at clearing out the dry underbrush in the forests that act as major kindling for whenever these fires do start, like lightning strikes, whatever it might be. And so that kind of outlines the rest of this for today, I think, is that we've got Texas showing 31 million acres ultimately of weather modification. What is it in the other states? Let's find out. How much does weather modification, what size of a role does that play in our day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year weather? Is it bringing about the very drought that they hope to avoid, they claim they hope to avoid? Or is all this disaster money corrupting everybody and making a fire industry? And I think we've got the tiger by the tail, Hesh. It's just a matter of fleshing it out more.
Yeah, exactly. What does happen to the soil? How does that affect grazing animals? How does that affect farming? How
Mm-hmm.
does that affect? I mean, we already have, just because of the techniques used in factory farming at this point, our soil is very much depleted, so depleted that one has to have a crazy health routine, or a very customized and personalized supplement routine to even maintain the vitamins and minerals for a healthy body. And then there's like all these books that we talked about. There's I'm sure it's been fact checked by the opinion makers. It's the other thing. Fact checkers have recently been forced to admit that they are opinionators in court, I believe. So that's another thing, everybody. If you're
Right.
going and hating this conversation that's been shared to you, and going and looking at all your favorite fact checkers, well, guess what? They are opinion makers. So there's that. But they'll tell you it's not a big deal. But anyways, what in the world are they spraying? There's all these other documentaries where people go around and they test the soil in places, and they're bringing up other things. They're saying they're finding like barium and strontium and uh, uh, other like heavy metal particles that are toxic. So what's actually in all these things? Why does this topic have to be something that we're not only is it hidden in plain sight in front of us, right? Like Mark just proved to everybody, it's hidden in plain sight right in front of us. Um, but then why do we have to be why does anyone have to watch what they say about it? Why is it a problem to question it when something is, you know what I mean? It's like it's ridiculous to think that, oh, you're not allowed to talk about that. You're not allowed to question that. What do you mean? That's not the nature of free discussion. That's like if you see someone stabbing themselves in the leg with their fork while they're eating, and you don't say anything because you don't want to offend anybody, because it's not cool to talk about self-harming yourself with a dinner fork for some reason. You know what I mean? Like that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to stop everybody from getting dinner forked in the thigh uh, with a guilt process that doesn't make any sense. Like, why should you be guilted into talking about this when you can just kind of logically go, okay, well, here's all the science on it, here's all the documents on it. Disregard all your fact checkers and the majority of your top 10 Google searches and all that stuff. And when you are reading things, like look at who funded it, look at what they do, look at what boards they're on. There's a whole simple process of just making your own mind up here. And that's all Mark and I are trying to do. And these conversations help me with that greatly, Mark. I want to give a quick shout out to Photon over on the Rockfin channel. He threw a tip in the jar over there. Thank you, Photon. Thanks for that. And thanks for everything you do. And on our Rockfin channel, we're new over there. There is a tip jar. So if you got crypto wallet set up, they'll help you do that. Just go in, make an account and all that stuff. It's pretty easy if you want to participate in that way. And thanks to everybody watching on Rockfin and YouTube today on the Alternate Current Radio YouTube channel, and out there on Spreaker. We've got our mixtape Saturday running on another stream here. So we are like multi-streaming today, Mark. We got music going out one way. We got this great interview going out three ways. And it's a pleasure to have you with us. Again, everybody, if you joined us late, that's Mark Anderson, the Truth Hound there. He hosts a show called Stop the Presses on RBN right here out of Central Texas. And Mark is on the road right now. He is our true roving correspondent here in the boiler room this week for culture, weather, and I don't know if we'll get to sport. We'll leave that to Basil Valentine tomorrow on the Sunday Wire, hopefully, Mark. But yeah, very pleased to have you here with us today. Really interesting topic, and I'm interested to see how it's received out there, especially in the YouTube algorithm. That'll be fun to see if this gets any neat tags or definitions attached to it. But yeah, go ahead,
Hopefully,
Mark.
hopefully so. You know, this is not a liberal conservative issue. This is something everyone should know about, and they really can't have it both ways. They put these public notices out there, and the ads will say, if you want to comment, write to this address, or there may be a meeting. If we get enough letters by so and so date, then there can be a public meeting. And I think that these public meetings, people from all stripes, all schools of thought, all worldviews need to come together on this. And there's many other issues we can all come together on to get that unanimity and that unity that the powers that be would rather we didn't have. And this is a perfect issue for that. This affects everybody's dinner plate. This affects everybody's home and community. And we just need to ultimately know, is what we're seeing in Texas that they're licensing affecting up to 31 million acres, something like 30%, up to 30% of the state. Is that typical? Is that typical for Texas? This is going to last about 4 years if these permits go through. Is this typical, give or take a little, in the other states? What's the norm? How frequently are these things done? What are the results? If they're getting licensure to do this, I think the public also, besides having the right to know they're going to do it, also has a right to know about ongoing updates and the ultimate results of these things. What's the data? The data should not be kept secret. The outcome should be published for all to see, so we can all begin writing to these agencies. And gosh darn it, am I going to have to get up to get an address? I might get up and get an address. I don't have that Texas legal ad in my clutches here. Hum a tune for a second here. I want to share whatever I can, because any Texas listeners can begin writing or calling immediately about this and say, we want more long-term updates. We want more input. So hold on just a moment.
Yeah, we'll hum a tune. Don't worry about it.
You're listening to Boiler Room on AlternateCurrentRadio.com.
Coming up next, more thought crimes from the social reject squad.
We can probably wind up with this.
Current Radio.
All right, everybody. Thank you for being here for this episode of Boiler Room. It's great to have everybody with us. Thanks, Terry and Adam and Ruckus and Spore. Photon, everybody else that's listening. I don't have my Discord up. You folks out there, thanks for checking out the show today. I am joined by Mark Anderson here, and we're back with you to close out the show. We're getting into the tail end of the show here, but Mark, I'll feed it back over to you for the address you want to give out, or any shout outs you want to give to point people to where they can get the American Free Press. I believe that's AmericanFreePress.net, where folks can grab that publication, have that show up in their mailbox. It's really nice. Suggest it. But yeah, over to you, Mark.
Yeah, you can also, for AFP, American Free Press, you can also call 888-699-NEWS, 888-699-NEWS between Monday and Thursday at 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Or you can write to subscriptions@AmericanFreePress.net. That's subscriptions@AmericanFreePress.net. But most importantly, I do have now the Fort Stockton Pioneer paper from April 14, about a couple of weeks ago. And one of the addresses I mentioned earlier, this is being done, the application, Notice of Intention to Conduct Weather Modification Operations in the State of Texas. That's the name of the ad. That notice is hereby given by the Trans-Pecos, PECOS, Weather Modification Association, 420-420 Mackey, Mackey, in Barstow, Texas. B like boy, ARSTOW, BARSTOW, Barstow, Texas 79719. Now, to go down a little bit more in the ad with other contact, persons interested in knowing more about the technical aspects of the proposed weather mod operation should contact Adam Foster, just like it sounds, Adam Foster, at the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, P.O. Box 12157, Austin, Texas 78711, phone number 512-936-4313. Again, 512-936-4313. Incidentally, however, 2 or 3 times that I tried that number, I kept getting a loud, busy signal, and I had to look up the more general number of the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. Now, anybody can just look that up online. Their phone number's right there. The TDLR, Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. You can look that up, and they've got a phone directory there. Also, there's another one. Individual members of the public who wish to inquire about the information contained in this public notice, or to inquire about other agency licensing, etc., may also call the TDLR. Here's another number to that regulatory agency at 800-803-9202, 800-803-9202, or go to www.tdlr, that's Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, .texas.gov. And you can look up weather modification or cloud seeding on there too, and it'll tell you about a lot of what's going on. But that's just the essentials there, Hesh, if people want to be a little more inquisitive. And I think that based on what I've seen so far, it would be very helpful if people made more calls, put more letters in the mail, more inquiries. These people need to know that the public is waking up, because the mass media is not going to talk about this stuff at all, or in any substantive way or constructive way. So it's up to the alternative media and the public to ring some doorbells and send some letters and make some phone calls, send lots of emails, and flesh this out. You know, make them explain the whole thing. Make them have public meetings. Get the ultimate results. Get the hard data as this goes on over the next 4 years. Because I'm pretty sure that they're going to approve the licensing. I have no reason to believe that it'll be turned down. Of course, if they do turn down any part of this or all of it, we'll get that reported too. But I very much doubt that that will happen. So that pretty much sums it up at this point in time.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. You know, we mentioned the term hysteria earlier, and I'm going to throw one quick headline at you before we close out here, because, you know, that's all I would really ask people is, could we just remove some of the hysteria at least and think logically about this? I mean, I understand that many of you out there have been told nothing your whole life, but this story that, you know, this climate change is your fault somehow. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but this is the result of the kind of just utter hysteria. I don't know what else to call it, Mark. Just total hysteria. I'm going to put this on the screen for you. Let me move my monitoring thingy here so I can still see what's going on. All right, check this out. We just had Earth Day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that a guy set himself on fire?
I was unaware of that.
Man who died after setting himself on fire. Let me make that even a little bit bigger there for everybody. There we go. Was a climate change activist. A woman who said when Bruce was a friend of hers called his death a deeply fearless act of compassion to bring attention to climate crisis.
Mm-hmm.
This man is reportedly dead after setting himself on fire in protest on Earth Day to bring awareness to the seriousness of climate change. Multiple outlets, including New York Times, reports 50-year-old Wynn Bruce of Boulder, Colorado, died after the incident that unfolded in front of the U.S. Supreme Court on Friday, according to the Metropolitan Police Department. It was pretty horrible. I've seen some pretty horrible stuff between watching Burnt Alive in Odessa before last week's Sunday Wire, and then this video of this. There's video of it. There's video of this guy in agony after this. But I mean, this is the utter hysteria that we're dealing with here. I mean, I know it's a divisive topic for some people out there, but look what it has done to those that take it into their heart and soul. You know what I mean? And I don't know. You could argue it's just a crazy person, but I mean, that was out of people.com, NewYorkTimes.com. Like, none of these. I haven't read them all the articles about this, but Mark, I would wager that not a single one of them would talk about how terrible it is that this topic of climate change has gotten so bad that people would go out and burn themselves alive. You know what I mean? Like, I think there is no reason ever to burn yourself alive on ever. But yeah, that video is out there. I mean, I watched it on Crowder Bits last night, and it was horrible listening to this guy, wail and scream as his head was on fire with accelerants poured all over it. Just awful, like that. So this is hysteria. This is hysteria that people will go to that length over this topic.
It is, yeah. To just kind of touch on it briefly. I'm going to surmise, I'm going to guess that this person has been fed a steady stream of catastrophic propaganda about how if we don't mend our ways soon, we're all going to perish because we're not heeding the warnings about climate change, which used to be at least a little more specific, and it was global warming. But when it didn't follow the warming trends quite steadily enough, they had to abandon that and just call it climate change so they can have it both ways. Whether it gets cooler or warmer doesn't matter. If people were subjected, and again, I'm not boasting, I'm just using my report here as just one of many possible examples. If people were subjected to logical reporting that looked at all the factors that affect the weather, man-made and otherwise, and what can be done logically and constructively in terms of human intervention to make things better, to make it rain when we need it to rain so we don't get absolutely scorched, and of course to avoid famine. We absolutely have to avoid famine, and the supply chains tie right into the weather issue quite a bit. If we had the fourth estate that the mass media cartel pretends it is, which it isn't, and we in the alternative media, at least the most vetted parts of it, are aspiring to be that new fourth estate. This is why the narrative is so important. So people like this guy, who I presume, again, was fed a steady diet of catastrophic, fear-laden, fear-mongering news reports, and was a sensitive soul, perhaps, and took it upon himself to kill himself. And if that's exactly what really happened, I mean, I'd like to see the death certificate. These things are just so inexplicable and hard to believe sometimes. I digress on that, though. We need responsible journalism on these things, and to stop ginning up fear and loss and betrayal and resigning ourselves to this fate that these fires are just going to keep happening. It doesn't have to be that way, but the media keeps pushing that worldview, that paradigm. And it's a paradigm that some people take to heart and might do something drastic like the guy you're talking about. So I guess that's enough said, but ultimately it's a fault of all this misleading and dangerous propaganda that they portray as the news. And it's pathetic.
It's really sad, man. Like if that story is as we expect, as it's presented, not only is it horrible, but it's a great example of just how toxic this corporate media is. The mass media cartel, as you've named it, is the perfect name. We've gone over that. Like, it fits the very definition of cartel so perfectly that six or less companies own more than 90% of the stuff that we take in, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we can bet that every mainstream news outlet that covered that story of that person's death all probably treated it as though at least he felt like he was a hero. His friends felt like he was a hero, a glorious martyr, and
Yes,
that's all
exactly.
well and good because it's based in reality, because what he did was based in reality. Because if they can't say what he did was based in reality and the science, then all of a sudden they become culpable, right? Because they are the ones that have dripped, utterly beer bonged, connected the beer bong of media into that guy's third eye and made that narrative part of his reality, part of his worldview, is that, oh, we're killing the planet, and in 12, like, this guy's what, I'm sorry, is he like influenced by the 17-year-old Greta or something like that? Did he take on the Extinction Rebellion thoughts that, hey, it's all done, and done? Like, I'm sorry, people, young people, they did this to us back in what was that, 2009 or somewhere about there. We had Al Gore put a movie out. This is like, and told us all that all these properties would be underwater by this year. And people cried. Everybody believed it. I probably believed it back then. I don't know. That was like right around the time where I started to go, wait a minute, everything's starting to look really false around me. And we started to have to examining, all these pillars of worldview. But none of that came to fruition. And now they're telling us they roll Greta out and they do all this stuff. They do all this Extinction Rebellion stuff before the pandemic hit, and it was all the rage. And the talking point was that we've only got 12 years left. We're going to have to exodus the planet to Mars before 12 years. And it's just as ridiculous then as it was in 2009. It's an old trick. So, how can we trust the mass media when it's owned by a small number of companies who Mark, we're talking about these industrial complexes, right? What's one of the hallmarks of an industrial complex is the revolving door of board members, right?
Yes.
So is it not also, folks, logical to suspect that maybe on these revolving doors of board members of these six companies, that there might be a conflict of interest? If you look at, I mean, we've proven it with pharmaceutical board members and the media, right? So they got six companies working with another six companies or so, and they work hand in glove. And what do you know? They made a product that literally every person on the planet was supposed to take.
Yeah, Hesh, if I may take a slight liberty here, and I appreciate your summarizing comments there. Because of the timing, I'd like to make a quick announcement about the political prisoner P.F. Lazor that I've kept track of.
Oh yeah, sure. This definitely is worth mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah, let me just get this out there. It's only because the timing is so providential. Right now is a perfect time for those to write to the California governor, I know, such as it is, to ask that he overturn the decision of the Board of Parole Hearings in the state of California to deny parole to P.F. Lazor. P.F. Lazor is a almost 40-year inmate. He's been in there almost 40 years, unjustly imprisoned in the Soledad, California, Salinas Valley prison there. He went in 1983 in a non-trial where everything was stacked against him. He protected himself under the Second Amendment. He did kill an invading assailant. He was sent up the river for second-degree murder. He's a whistleblower. He's a very principled guy, very well read, and he should have been out of prison on May 1st, 1992, statutorily, or no later than the late 90s. The California system, the Golden State Gulag, as I call it, is basically unlawfully holding him for decades past when he should have been out. I can your listeners, Hesh, if anybody wants more information, they can write to you and I can get that to them, or they can email me at truthhound2@yahoo.com, TRUTHHOUND, the numeral 2@yahoo.com. But it's important right now, even if it's just 3 or 4 sentences, the shortest letter is the best letter. Please, Governor Newsom of California, overturn the parole board's decision to deny parole to P.F. Lazor, the prisoner in the Salinas Valley State Prison near Soledad, California. Please overturn the parole board, nullify what they did, thereby allowing P.F. Lazor to be paroled. His is one of the most egregious cases of unlawful imprisonment, probably in California and national history. Absolutely unlawful imprisonment. And the mailing address for Governor Gavin Newsom, I know your friend and mine, right, is 10210 O Street, like O like Olive, 10210 O Street, Suite 9000, Sacramento, California, 95814. The phone number there, if you need to confirm something, 916-445-2841. That's 916-445-2841. Again, just write a very quick letter, even a postcard, to Governor Gavin Newsom at the Sacramento State Capitol there, 95814. Please overturn the parole board's denial of parole for P.F. Lazor. P.F. like Paul Frank, Lazor, L-A-Z like zebra, O-R. He's a former Buddy Holly tribute musician, a longtime musician who was sent up the river like in the way that I described it for the reasons I described. So the faster these brief but emphatic letters get to Governor Newsom, the quicker this will be called attention to him and his staff, to where there's at least that outside chance that the parole board's denial of parole for Lazor could be overturned and he could be freed. So I wanted to get that out there for this multimedia show today, Hesher, and I thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm very glad that you did. And if anyone wants more information, you can go to alternatecurrentradio.com. Grab the hamburger menu, just click in the 3 lines in the upper right, and in the search bar, type in Mark Anderson, Anderson, and you'll get every episode of Boiler Room that Mark has been on. And if you thumb through those, look through those, not only will you find a bunch of cool interviews and podcasts, but you will find a couple of extended talks about what happened there with Mr. Lazor, and various more information, articles about him and all that. So we've got that linked on previous shows up there. So visit us on the web, alternatecurrentradio.com. And of course, Mark's website is thetruthhound.com. And again, host of Stop the Presses on RBN Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Another great Central Texas media outlet there. There's not many of us, Mark. It's hard to keep these media self-funded and listener-funded media outlets going. You know exactly what I'm talking about there. It's a tough battlefield. So proud to have you over here in the Boiler Room with us today, Mark, and thanks for getting the shout outs to PF Lazor there. I hope that changes. I really hope that changes. That has been a very, very unfair situation. So Mark, thanks for joining us today, and we'll do it again very soon. I'll look forward to joining you on Stop the Presses soon as well.
No problem, Hesh. Whoever says there's no political prisoners in America needs to think again. There's lots of them, and Lazor is one of several that I've been profiling. There's another one in the latest edition of American Free Press. Check it out, and we'll see you later, Hesh. Thanks for having me on.
All right. There he goes, everybody. That is Mark Anderson, the Truth Hound. You've been listening to the Boiler Room over here. Thanks for joining us. Again, visit us on the web, alternatecurrentradio.com. We're going to go ahead and cut this live stream. Thank you, Rockfin. It was great to be over there. I think I might have screwed up the beginning of that broadcast, so we'll see what gets captured on the recording there. But all right. Pleasure, absolute pleasure to be with you folks over there on Rockfin. And we'll be back. Yes, we'll be back for another live stream real soon here. Everybody have a great day. And don't forget to visit us for Sunday Wire. We'll be live for Sunday Wire. That is at 9 Pacific, 11 Central, noon Eastern. And what is that? 5 p.m. UK time. We'll have Patrick Henningsen back in the studio this Sunday, and it should be an interesting one. A lot of stuff going on in the news. Can't wait to hear what Patrick's going to bring us on the Sunday Wire. Go to alternatecurrentradio.com. Check out the Daily Ruckus. Check out Soul Purpose. Check out the Oddcast. Check out the Mystical American Patriot Society. Check out the Boiler Room if you haven't been listening to it. We've got our podcast discography sort of backfilling, but yeah, it's reaching all the way back to last December now. It'll stretch backward from there. We're reposting all our old podcasts, but it takes a little bit of time. So anyways, we'll see you. Oh, and if you want to join us for some music, we're also broadcasting at mixcloud.com. Just look up Alternate Current Radio over there at Mixcloud if you want to catch some tunes today. And we'll keep the streams going over here all the way up until Sunday Wire, and do it again for you next week. And we'll be back on Rockfin. We'll start putting some premium content up over here. That's it, everybody. We're out of here. AlternateCurrentRadio.com. Visit us over there. Join our Discord if you want to hang out. We'll see you next time.